Unreal up until actually very recently, Unreal's been a deferred renderer, and the way I would explain this is using this illustration where effectively it's rendering all these different passes, a little bit like when we would do compositing in Photoshop, and comes up with the final image, the final pixel. So this is the way I've illustrated is like different renders stacked on top of each other, like layers, contributing to the final pixel color. So this is what we've got in our viewport as the end result, effectively, but it's outputting all these layers which we're familiar with, for example here, Z depth and ambient occlusion, and many, many more. So it's really useful to understand this concept when we see all the different things which will effectively contribute to the final pixel color. So I'll just go over these quickly. I've gone over these also in last webinar. Here I thought it might be useful to reiterate a little bit this, but I won't take too long, hopefully. So here we've got this skylight, and in this skylight it's very much like any other rendering package. We've got this overall ambient lighting which is dealt with a skylight, and here we've got default UI sky, and then we plug in some HDRs, some blueprint sky, and in this instance a cube map, because this is what I'm going to show you in a minute. So it's interesting to note that the environment color in Unreal is able to be added on top of the skylight, whereas in a renderer like V-Ray, we would either have the background color or an image for image-based lighting. And in this instance, we've also got the atmospheric fog, which will greatly contribute to the final color to the image, in contrast to the offline render, where a lot of the times things like fog will be added in post-production and will therefore not contribute to the lighting of the scene. So something which differs a little bit, we don't have a sun in Unreal Engine. We've got the direct light, so that the particularity of this light is that all the rays are parallel. So that's what we use for our sunlight. And then here we've got our light mass. So the light mass is effectively the global illumination system, and we've got this dreaded build button, and the calculation for this light mass can take hours and hours and hours. Sometimes it's sort of taking 8 to 9 hours for me on some scenes, and so we'll need to optimize that if we want to be able to work in any meaningful way. I have to, even though it's lighting, I also have to mention reflections, because we've got these reflection probes which are massively important. In webinar 2 I talked about screen space reflections and planar reflections, which also are very useful when we need more precise reflections, as we tend to do in architecture. So I won't delve on these too much, because I really want to get into to show you these scenarios. Before, it would be a little bit foolish to not talk about post-process when we talk about lighting, because in Unreal Engine, for me, the lighting and the post-production, what we would typically do in post-production, are very much interlinked and work hand in hand with each other, as opposed to, again, comparing with the old, it's still current, but it feels a bit old, the offline render version, when we would do our lighting, put it through to the renderer, and then import it into the post-production package. Then at this stage we'll make some very unhappy people if we want to start fiddling with our lighting, and then go back into the 3D package, re-render, and then change the post-production. So that's a system which is quite linear. Here in Unreal, it works very much hand in hand. So we'll have a look at that. So in fact, little poll if we have time, if we've got V-Ray users in the room. So let me just see. So we haven't got that yet, but it doesn't matter. I will, here we go. Yes, I knew it. Lots of V-Ray users. So I will explain to you, well, 55%. Okay. I'll explain to you, because even if you're not a V-Ray user, this is going to be useful to understand how tone mapping works. So the post process within color correction and doing all these effects and things like that. So one thing which is very much under the hood and works very well, it's and is worth me explaining to you, is this idea of tone mapping. So Unreal Engine is completely high dynamic range. So the settings go from 0 to 1 with a floating point decimal afterwards. So we've got incredible amount of precision, and the values for lighting can go very, very high. And like any renderer or any computer-generated image, it needs to display this very high range of lighting intensities onto the screen. So for us V-Ray, for V-Ray users, some of this will look rather familiar. We've got the problem of sRGB, gamma to 0.2, linear workflow, color mapping, linear, exponential, Reinhardt, and so on. It gives me a little headache just talking about it. We've got exposure control, and we've got this curve. So we understand very quickly that this gamma 1 curve is how it works internally in the software, and that in order to display our colors properly, we need to change the response curve to our screens. But this technology was developed for these guys, the old CRTs, which I haven't seen one of these for 10 years maybe. And so we are still using this sRGB technology, and we've got all sorts of different ways to map this high dynamic, high range of colors onto our 8-bit or effectively 8-bit in the end images. So this is the first step, if you want, in the post-processing, where we have this tone mapper, which is has been introduced in version 4.15, a little bit unsung hero, I think, because it's worth noting this Academy color encoding system. So what I love about the Epic Games upgrades is that they bring in this major update, and really what there is for us to do is nothing. We don't you don't really need to do anything about this. It might just be good for you to understand what's going on. This in this tone mapper, it's there's these new terms: slope, toe, shoulder, and frankly, when I saw this, I had no idea what that meant. So that is from this new system called ACES, which instead of having this sRGB and very complex systems, which needs to be dealt externally and internally by the software, this is in fact the Oscar Academy, you know, the ones that give out Oscars every year. They've developed this system of tone mapping, which will effectively is done to sort out, because a lot of studios work on the same movie, and they obviously have the same problem as we do with this tone mapping, and this is where they can exchange files and they'll talk the same language. So just quickly, this slope here is going to be the angle of this curve. The toe is going to be the bottom with the black clip here, and then the white clip and the shoulder is going to be dealing with the top of this curve. And this is a very familiar S curve that if we've ever done color correction in Photoshop is very, very familiar to us. So this is, again, something for you to know. You don't really need to do anything, maybe just change these values accordingly. But That's for tone mapping. What that means in practice for us, just this little test actually running with V-Ray, putting a spotlight very, very high intensity. This is possibly, I think it was 1,500 or something like that. So here you see that as the spotlight gets massively intense, it just goes, it's a blue colored spotlight shining on a white wall, but it gets massively blue, and something that doesn't seem to really happen that much in reality. Whereas here in Unreal Engine, I've made this spotlight very, very intense, and you see that without really having to do anything like choosing the color mapping or anything, I've got a beautiful washed out towards white color at the top there, and then a beautiful gradient towards the color blue. So does it all by itself, but as a comparison, I took a picture of an LED here, and you can see that it does the same thing. At the intense brightness point, it tends towards complete white, burnt but very, very subtly, and then gradients towards the color. So this is something that happens for us all by itself. So that's great. In terms of post-production, one thing that I always systematically do is work with the white balance. So here I've shown you here the temperature, and this is the image without the white balance. So this, if you take pictures with your camera, with your phone, the white balance will always be applied even without your knowledge. And so when you see this, the render here without the white balance applied, it's very warm, completely sort of almost sort of sepia tinted image, and whereas here I was able to bring it back towards the cooler tones, and the floor is actually cool, and then it enabled me to work with this cool versus warm color. Another thing which I'm not going to go into too much detail because it really won't take much, it will take too much time, and here it's very well explained in the documentation, is the LUT. So let me see if I've got it on here. I'll just show you very quickly in the interface. Since it's changed, they've got it in here in the color grading, and if we go into global, we've got this ability to bringing this LUT table. So I'll let you, maybe Chris, you could give this link into the chat, but it's very well explained and it's pretty straightforward, but enables us to add some color correction and some additional contrast. This was before before the new tone mapper came in. I would do this systematically, but to be honest, now I'm beginning to use that less and less, and use the tone mapper to change my contrast. Right. So I'll just carry on a little bit because this was still at post-processing. The other thing that we'll need to take into account into post-processing is exposure. So I'll quickly move to that. Oh yeah, before that, the vignette as well is very straightforward. We can just add the vignette and just show you what it's with and without. Enables us to lower the contrast a little bit on the edges and give a bit more strength to the center of the image. And then finally, yes, the exposure. One thing I really want to point out to you is this fix at log 0 exposure. So when we click onto the link, so let me find my room there. If I click onto this lit and go to exposure, and I go fix at log 0, that's the way I like to work. So I'll show you that in a little in a minute, how that works on this scene. And so exposure, and the other point to look at is this minimum brightness and maximum brightness. So here I've set it on 1.2. So let me get back to that. Up on 1.2, and then the max brightness on 2. But we'll have a look at that in a minute. Okay, so what I've got for you here is just how to create this scene, and I've just filmed myself going through these steps effectively. So I've actually filmed myself doing it, and then sort of noted the steps down. So there's some slight discrepancies between this very nice theoretical linear workflow, and obviously the practice is a little bit more, and you can swap things around, and sometimes I forget and put them at the end. But effectively it starts with creating a cube map, which I'm going to show you in a second, and then we add the skylight, and then we deal with our light maps. So I'll explain that. We add our light mass portals. Again, I'll explain that in a minute. Just to quickly tweak the settings, nothing too fancy. Add the light mass importance volume, and then deal with the post-process where I turn off the ambient occlusion, and without forgetting to add our reflection probes, because they make a very big difference in the image. Okay, so I've got here a little video. It's about 5 minutes, and I will turn that on. Actually, let me just quickly make that bigger, because I can see that it's a bit pixelated, and that's not nice. So I'll put that up, and hopefully that will look better. So yeah, so here I create a square image in Photoshop. It's very simple, very easy. I just and I scale it by 600. So what we're trying to do here is create a cube map that we're going to insert into our skylight to give us a completely flat white color coming from all angles. So here, in fact, I do it not, I'm just going to pause here a second. I've just turned down the white so that it's a little bit gray, and again, in the documentation, there's this very simple page about creating cube maps for Unreal Engine, and I just make sure I note down this complicated specification here. So I just copy that into Photoshop, and then what we want to do is save this long image as a DDS. So if you've got Photoshop, you can do that along with me, because then you'll have a cube map that's ready to use at the end of the webinar. So here I just make sure I've got these settings and say cube map in here, and then carry on. Maps we don't need to worry about. So now I'm back in Unreal Engine, and I'm going to create just an empty scene, and I'm just selecting some of the walls and geometry that we have used already in the scene that the image that you've seen. Bring those in, and then just do a little bit of tidying up there. So I bring in my skylight, and within the skylight, so I import the cube map that I've just created in Photoshop. Check everything's all right. So by the way, this is sped up. I don't normally work this quickly. So here we've got our light maps. Okay, so light map density, I talked about it last time, but I just press Alt and 0 on my keyboard. So I just go back in the engine, press Alt 0, and here I make sure that it's very high res. So this this demo scene is very small, so I took the liberty to just bump it up, but really it doesn't necessarily need to be that high res. The rule of thumb that I give myself is to have a light map density which is as small as the smallest item, that especially on the floor. So for example, so if I just pause that and go back to here, for example, I will make sure that my light map density is smaller than the foot of this bench here. That's kind of the rule of thumb that I give myself. So I'll just go back to that. And so once I forgot to bring the staircase, so I'll just bring that in, check the light map density. And so here I kind of look at the colors, and then there's a slight, I'm not sure whether we need to have power of 2 values. So just super quick here, you saw me change from this level of exposure to and I've set it on this using this exposure log fixed at 0. So now it's fixed at 0, and it gives me a sort of a benchmark to work against. So I changed my lighting settings, so we'll have a look again at these, but that my light mass settings are such 0.75, 0.75, nothing too fancy, absolutely no editing of the INI file. I've stopped that long ago, and they really is far too complicated and doesn't seem to be worth the complication. Here I've turned my ambient occlusion off so that I can really see what's going on. So here, started building the lighting, and I thought while we're waiting for that, I just show you this very quick trick about the swarm agent while we're there, because obviously we're going to spend a long time calculating, and there's a little thing. So if you see when you start your lighting calculation, you see this little S in your system tray. So double click on that, and you will have your swarm agent, which is, for those of you who don't know, is the renderer. So when you click build into Unreal Engine, it sends it out to this guy who is going to work in parallel. That's why you can continue working in Unreal while your lighting is calculating. If you go into the settings tab, you will see that so here the show developer menu will probably, if you don't know this, will probably be set on false. Right, so if you want to set that on true, and now I've lost my, I'll start the movie again. If you want to set your little swarm agent on true, you will see that the developer settings menu will, so let me pause that, will appear. And then if you click on that, and you will see that your local job default process count might be, for me, it was set on 6. So that's 20% of my power that's been taken away. So if you set that on 8, then you will see that your computer will be using your full or near full capacity for building calculation, and you will gain 20% speed and power. Very easy, simple trick. So carrying on, you see that I forgot to put my portals, light mass portals. So they're very, there's no need to be precise with them. Just put them where your openings are. They make a big difference in quality and speed. They effectively tell the light mass where to send out the rays. So here, just quick pause there to see the effect. So let's find it again. The effect that the so it doesn't like me pausing very much. So when I just wanted to show you the effect that when that wall was completely white, it was because of the reflection probe that was misplaced, placed wrongly in the scene. So make sure you spend a good deal of time to check your reflection probes. So just quickly there, I'm just showing the settings. Let me go full screen again. I'm showing the settings that the speed that it's rendering at. So while so here's that white wall. I'm just moving the reflection probe, and you can see the massive difference that has. The speeds when I'm iterating, the render times are sort of 30 seconds to calculate the lighting. I just put this on 1 and then work on preview, and then to the final one, it only took about 5 minutes on production. And then so that's our final kind of lighting solution, which is pretty decent, for a 5-minute render. So I'm just going to show you just to reiterate, because it was quite quick, the light mass settings that I used. So here I work pretty systematically on all the scenes I have with this 0.75 on static lighting scale and lighting smoothness on 0.75 as well. Unclick compress light maps, because really you don't want compression artifacts, JPEG artifacts in your beautiful gradients of light. And I turn that to black or white. Experiment, you can feel free to turn that on white, and it will help out to reach some of these darker areas that the skylight doesn't reach. And then indirect lighting quality, I just push it to the maximum, maybe on 10 for the final render when you go away for the night. And I work on my production and preview so on preview is just at the beginning to set the general amounts of light needed in the scene. When you set the very large kind of whether the skylight will be on 1 or 15, for example, it's useful to use this lighting quality premium preview and production. While I'm here, a really good tip is to use this lighting static mesh info here, and then you will go to lighting build info. I haven't got any here because I haven't just built, but if you go here just after you've built, you will see all your meshes a little bit in this manner, and you can order them by decreasing order, and you will see here which one's taken, how long it's taken to calculate each piece of geometry in your scene. So that's very interesting, very useful for debugging. Right. Okay, move on to the exciting stuff. So light maps I've talked about a little bit, and so yeah, before we see the building up of the scene, quickly on build time issues. Your light map sizes will massively impact your build time. So these are to be really set carefully, so that it's a good trade-off between high build times or very precise light maps. Light mass importance volume, I have got it in this scene. I don't always put it because it's if you haven't got it, it will take your entire scene. But you see, for example, here I've put my light mass importance volume to not cover the entirety of the scene, and I believe that will help with the speed. And so sometimes you may want to scale it down to a very small area, and maybe that will calculate quicker. And then the swarm, like I've said, just you can add all your processes onto it and then use it to do network rendering, and it works very, very well. So you can add lots and lots of computers if you've got them. Right, so let's see how I've built up this image from scratch. So I'll just try and show you that in the interface. So let me just set it up. So that's this one, and I'll show you this one. So in case everything goes wrong, I will jump back into, when it starts crashing, I will jump back into PowerPoint and continue. If all goes well, I will show you here in the interface. So let's see here. I'm just going to set that up here and turn my global illumination off. Okay, so here, I'll make this a little bit bigger. So here we've got the scene with the skylight illumination only. So this is the result of having this white cube map. Here I've set my intensity to 14, which is sort of quite high but normal for an interior shot. And the result, the image that you see here, is effectively the direct light coming from the skylight. And so you see that we've got our nice soft lighting happening here. Then if I turn with my post-process volume, if I turn my indirect lighting intensity up, you can see that it's the GI that starts appearing. So if you don't touch anything, then we've got our indirect lighting set at the default value, and then that's one. So here we're able to turn this down a little bit, and it gives us, again, like this idea of working with different layers, a little bit like compositing in Photoshop. We can just start to bring that down or as to play around with that. Okay, and then simply, so we've got our skylight, and then simply here I was just playing around with these spotlights on the shelf. So just to show you a little bit this spotlight effect here, we've got a shadow. So these spotlights, again, we've set them on static movable. We talked about it last time. So here I've got it on movable, but what disturbs me a little bit is that very harsh shadow. So I thought I'd just show you a little trick. I'm not sure whether that's what it's for, but it works for me. So normally if you open your file, you'll just have it like this, and I just expand this little window back here. And I will, in order to soften this shadow, I will just lower this shadow resolution scale here, and you can see that if I just do it a little bit, the shadow's gone a little bit softer. So if I just go 1 again and then 0.5, then we've got a nicer, softer shadow. The problem is that the light started leaking over these shelves, and that's not good. We don't want that. So we need to change our shadow bias, and I'm going to reduce that again, and you see that shadow is now disappearing here on the edge. Okay, the problem with the shadow bias, if we go too low, then we get this self-shadowing, and that's not good. Okay, so here again, we've got a very soft, we've got a very fine line to tread here. And this is the same thing for these other lights. So we'll go back into these spotlights in the night, because that's going to be very important. But note that I'm still on my fixed at log 0. So now if I go back to default in-game, I'm going to turn my directional light on, my sunlight and affect world. So here we begin to affect the mood of the scene by bringing the strong sunlight. And what I'd like to do is just show you how, if I was to make sure I'm on exposure, yeah. And so what happens when, or maybe I'll just show you that in my PowerPoint, because it works a little bit better. So these are all the steps you've already seen. So I bring this up, and so here, when we get to the sunlight, you see it's on 25, and we've created an effect that where the tone mapper of Unreal is going to start working for us, where here I've got, if you observe, the ceiling is fairly well exposed, and when I bring in a harsh sunlight, this becomes quite dark. So it's because the tone mapper of Unreal is compensating for this strong sunlight coming in. So if I bring it over, if I make it even brighter, we begin to really work with our changing the mood of the scene. So here it becomes, rather than this Scandinavian overcast, it becomes much more a Mediterranean kind of Spanish, sun. And then when we get to very high levels, it becomes more maybe divine, what you might get before a manga character gets beamed up to the heaven of mangas or picked up by some alien ship. So this is the reason why I illustrate this here is because that is what I used in this Church of Light scene. So it might seem a little bit extreme here, but in fact it was actually quite appropriate to render a church by Tadorando. And here again, so we've got this very high contrast and strong sunlight coming in. So it might be something that we may want to use in our whatever presentations, movies. And so here again, it's fantastic because really there is nothing to do apart, no tricks, you know, to learn or complicating setup. Here, if we want strong sunlight, we just increase the intensity of the sun, and the tone mapper will do the rest for us. Okay, so moving on, interior at night. So this setup, I might just go through it in the PowerPoint because it will stop me from digressing too much. But this is the scene. I just added these spotlights on the ceiling, and I worked with IES lights. So actually, in fact, let me contradict myself, and I will make sure it's open so that at least we've got it if we want to get to it. Okay, and I will be able to point things. So we've got the so let me just build up zero light here. And I've just bumped up my indirect lighting intensity here. So this is the result of the light mass calculation, just very, very subtle. These are my IES lights, so I've brought them close to the wall and then work with a IES value. That's really straightforward to bring that in. And then these are my ceiling lights going straight down. And then this is working with an Omni onto this lampshade with a subsurface scattering value onto the lampshade here. So you'll find that in your file. The great thing about this is that having applied a subsurface scattering value onto the lampshade, the shadow that is cast by the lampshade onto the wall is correct. I don't have this big sort of lines. It's a hard shadow like I have it here on the foot of the lamp. Then we've got spotlights that I've discussed already, and then so now I'm bringing it all back together. And again, this is just like working in our composition in Photoshop. We can just bring all these layers back on top of each other. And now I bring my lighting intensity back, and here again I just point out the different moods we can achieve. Here is very low light, maybe more appropriate to kind of residential bedroom or lounge, and then we bring it up. It's a little bit brighter, more of a public space, and here this is maybe more something that's appropriate for retail space or things like that. So it's very, very easy once we've got our light set up to change the intensities, to play around with the mood because of this way it works as layers. So quick thing on spotlights, I will go back in the interface for that. Here I'd like to show you how, maybe go full screen on this one. I've used these spheres, just two white spheres to light these spaces. And I've got Omnis here, but actually that's they've turned off. I've turned them off, so I didn't use them. I just put them in as a test and chose not to use them in the end. So the light in the staircase is only given by these two self-illuminating spheres, area lights, I call them. And the same thing, the back of these shelves are illuminated by these strips of white light. So you can see how the tone mapper is working very, very hard here to give to accommodate the brightness of these lights. So that's why I just when I work on the lighting, I make sure I fix it, whichever value you want. But it's good to try and not have that too complicated changing setup when you're trying to set your lights. So again, this sort of soft shadow here, and I've played around with the IES. One thing to notice with the IES lights is that you want to have your outer cone angle really wide, because the IES light has got definition all the way to the top here. So when you have your cone, which is a low, you lose all the definition of your IES. So that's what I've noticed working with these IES lights. Just for those of you who don't know, it's very, very simple. You just import these IES files straight into Unreal, and then in your Spotlight, you just drag them on here. And that's very easy and straightforward. Okay, so carry on, because I can see the clock ticking, and we've still got to go through this scene. So before I do that, I'm going to make sure it's open and working. Yes, great. All right, so the thing about this scene, I said before, is that it's without any GI. So I'm not going to talk about the landscape too much, although this is done with the grass tool. So the grass tool and the landscape tool, it's all animated. Every single strand of grass is moving in the wind. The flowers are, although not here because it's still in fact, I'm not going to, I'm going to demonstrate that to you straight away in here. All the little buttercups are moving, the leaves are all moving. So this scene is not an example of performance for real-time games. In fact, it's abysmal performance, especially on my laptop. But I think this is a taste of things to come. We are here in Archvis. I think we tend to try and bring things like this to their knees. We'll pump as much stuff as possible because we don't necessarily need 90 frames a second. Sometimes we might just output stills or movies, so in which case, 1 frame every minute is probably going to be great for us. So this scene was set up very simply, without any GI. So here I just I'm just going to build it up like I did before. So here we've got the reflections, which are given by the skylight's cube map here already. So I put a HDR sky in here, and if I turn on my skylight, you will see that I have a very flat illumination, which is effectively what I was looking for. This is a little bit something that comes from me from learning to paint actually in oil, but super quick. We tend to have very flat shadows with very small amount of detail, and leave the reading of the information in the shadows to the imagination a little bit. So this is the effect I was actually looking for. If I move on, I've turned on my atmospheric fog, which gives me a very definite illumination of the sky here. Then the exponential height fog is going to cover the geometry between the horizon and my scene. So again, we can really see how we're building our layers like we would do in Photoshop. This is the typical workflow that you would see in a compositing package, the fog being added as a layer on top. Then here I've actually built this sky dome as a blueprint. The great thing about it is that it's animated. If I can show you this, the sky moving a little bit, try not to make you feel too sick. So this, if you just follow maybe this cloud, even the horizon's actually moving, so very slowly. So you can do that, and you can change the speed at which it's moving, so it adds a bit of life, which is great. So go back to my build up. We've got the sky dome, and then in the end I just turn on the directional light, and that gives me the illumination for my scene. And so you see that if I go back and forth, if you look at the underneath of this tree, the shadow does not change due to the sun being turned on, which obviously in a fully global illumination rendered scene, that would change because obviously the sun's just come out. But in this case, no, it's more working as a compositor with these different tools. That's the way I see it, and it's very, very flexible because everything is real time, and there's no need to build the GI, which in a scene like this, very, very large area, I haven't even tried, to be honest. I don't even know how long that would take. Right, so now I'm just going to do a tiny little maintenance. I'm going to break this link, save that, because my trees look a little bit different. And I want to show you how, sorry, I'm getting confused, how I've built this nighttime scene in, so I'm going to try to do that in the interface so that it's a bit more exciting. So I'll just turn these guys off and give you the exponential height fog, the full build up. So I just turn that off, and then I'm just going to expand a little bit my view here. Okay, so this is our black scene. I've just put my skylight again, so very flat lighting is just giving us a base, so that we work off something non-black. Again, I'm looking at this thinking this is going to be the illuminance of my non-lit areas. So just to trust the process. Obviously, this is not looking so great at the moment. Then inside, I've used a combination of uplighters and downlighters. The uplighters, because in this particular project, this is how the inside was lit, with uplighters lighting this white ceiling and the reflected light lighting the space. So here I cheated and put some uplighters and put some fake downlighters, so sort of soft spotlights. Then we start illuminating the perimeter of the house with these downlighters, just straightforward spotlights, downlighting the exterior. There's nothing to them, but the beauty of it again is that because this is, real time, I can change everything in interactively. So here, if I want to make this much smaller or higher, I just do it, and no need to render. And so in fact, what's a bit annoying is that we've got the spotlights here, but if I press G, I hide them all, and then I can even continue working this way. So this is, I think, well, for me, it was incredibly fun to light this scene and to play with this. So, and then we've got the floodlights for the trees. So here are some kind of warm colored floodlights. And then using the background, some cooler colored floodlights coming from the slopes. And so this, again, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but everything's moving, all the leaves are moving and everything. So it's very exciting stuff. And then finally, I just added the exponential, height fog with a volumetric fog. And again, it's brilliant. They've added this, and all you need to do is tick that tick to enable it. And so that's very exciting. And I think I'm really looking forward to what's going to come out of our industry with this volumetric fog, because again, we're trying to create emotion and atmosphere, and no stage designer or events organizer would dream to have an event without some kind of fog effect. Just quickly here, the density, this standard density for the fog is on 0.02 normally, so I've bumped high level 0.4. So there you go. I think that's going to cover my bit. I just go back to this. This is where we're at, and finish on that.
Great. Thank you, Fabrice. I appreciate that. Hopefully everyone can hear and see me. So apologies to those that are having some internet issues, but thanks for those that are sticking with us. I'm going to go ahead and the folks at Twinmotion. Stefan is going to step in, and he's going to present what they've been working on, which is a really amazing tool that's completely based on the Unreal Engine. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and Stefan, you can take it away.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I think it's okay for everyone. So I will turn on my screen.
Yes, we see it.
Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you, Chris. So let's talk a few minutes about Twinmotion 2018. I'm really pleased today to show you this new tool based on Unreal Engine. So I work for Advent as product manager. Advent is a French company, a French tech company. We distribute exclusively in France Archicad. And for the worldwide, we are editing 3D software, 3D rendering software. Maybe you already know Atlantis, and we created Twinmotion. And with the Unreal Engine, you will have the opportunity to create Archvis really the simplest way. So just to show you the principle of this software, you will have a clear interface, as you can see, really based on iconography. So you will have a lot of iconography in the software. Everything is chronological, so you will have the import section, the urban section, the nature section. You can create medias and export your medias. Of course, you will find a burger menu to open your scene, to save as. You will have the opportunity to import 3D models, such as great formats like SKP for SketchUp format. You will have FBX, OBJ, C4D, many 3D formats. So as you can see here, I imported FBX files in my scene. And I created an Archvis scene in real time with the fantastic, powerful, the power of Unreal Engine. So here I created a terrain, a 3D house, and I will be able to make really great things in this scene. So for example, let's have a look to the nature dock here. I will be able to go to the vegetation dock. I will have a paint tool and an erase tool. Thanks to the library, the default library, I will be able to choose any default tree, or for example here grass and flower, bushes. You have many possibilities integrated in the software, and you will have just to drag and drop it in the Dropbox and to use your two tools. So as you can see, it's really easy to use. So for example, I will be able to erase the grass. I selected the grass. I will be able to paint it if I want. So anywhere I can paint grass on my project. I will be able to, just go back. Okay, I will be able to, for example, change the weather. So as you can see, I have just two sliders. It's really easy to use. Well, let's make it rain. So I will just go to the rain part. As you can see, I have rain everywhere with raindrops on the ground. And it's raining only on outdoors part, not inside. So it's really class to use to create Archvis like that. I will be able to change the season, for example, here. So let's go to the autumn parts. The grass and the trees are changing for the color. I will be able to go to the snow here. Okay, so the winter part. Snow is it's snowing everywhere. Okay, as you can see. And the amount, of course, on biogeometry, the amount of the snow is depending on the slope of the geometry. So it's really easy to use. I will have real-time smog here. I will be able to change the ocean. So for example, here I use it to create a water part. I will just go back to the sunny day. It will be a bit cool to look at. Okay, so here I will be able to change my ocean. So I have Atlantic Ocean, large river, tropical sea, rapid rivers. moody river, tropical river, and of course, each time you go in the water, when you go back to the other side, you see it's really totally different in real time. So I will have many tools. What do I have more? For example, here in the urban doc, I will be able in Twinmotion, when I put in my architectural file, just to create a vehicle path. So it's really easy to use. As you can see, not a lot of control. I will have just one control here to select it, a pen, and I will just use my pen to draw the path directly in the preview. Okay. Make a right click and it's finished. So I will have automatically cars dropping on my path. I will be able to change the lane count here. I will be able to change the lane offset, change the density in real time. Everything thanks to the power of the Unreal Engine. Change the speed, change the traffic rules depending of your position, your geolocalization in the planet. Reverse eventually the orientation. I have a 2 lanes mode if I want to have 2 lanes. So it's really class, to use. And my cars, my geometry here is really class. So everything is based on the library, the default library. As you can see here, I have a Peugeot, Citroën. I will have a Tesla Model S, a Porsche. You have many cars, many manufacturers' cars. What do we have next? I have, for example, here, just to show you, I will be able to change the background. So, for example, here, if I just go back to the nature and change here the smog, I will have a background here, a city background. I will be able to change it in the urban doc, choosing, for example, the town, the countryside, the waterfront, the bay, the city island, the mountains, and of course, I will be able to rotate it. So in the future, of course, you will be able to import your own picture to create your own background. But for the first version of Twinmotion 2018, you won't be able to do it, but it will come, don't worry. We have many things to show again. You have of course a character path, a bicycle path, custom path. For the characters, you will have all the characters based on the default library. So if I go just there in the humans category, as you can see, we have many possibilities. Okay, for the beach, here we have kids. Okay, many possibilities for the people. Sorry. So you will have groups. You will be able to select your groups and to just drag and drop it instantly in your project, and to look at your people. You will have the same, for example, here if you work on interiors, you will be able to import your own furnitures. You will have in the default library many furnitures available for you, so chairs, electronic appliances like a Surface Pro, a MacBook Pro. And a good information for you, Twinmotion will be available on Mac, so it's a cross-platform software. It's really easy to use. So, for example, just use a light. So let's go back to the home of the library. Use a spotlight. As you can see here, it's really simple to use. You just drag and drop it in the preview. If you want to use an IES, you just have to load it here. Okay. For this one, I won't use it. You will be able to change the intensity in lumens, of course. You will have the possibility to change the temperature. So here, just by moving big sliders, really easy to use. But of course, you will be able, for your lights, to change here the color in real time. What do we have next? We have, of course, the angle. Okay, really easy. The attenuation on the surface for the distance. So, for example, here, if I want to have a small light or a big light with real-time shadows here, and of course, you will have the possibility to activate a automatic day cycle. So, for example, here, if I activate it, as you can see, okay, daytime here it's 10 in the morning. So, of course, the light is off. But if I want to go to the night here, just by moving my slider, of course, you will see that it will be turned on automatically. Okay, so everything is easier in Twinmotion than in many of the softwares or rendering softwares of the market, thanks to the Unreal power, of course, as I said. And you will have many possibilities, like, for example, here in the panel high, you will have, of course, the possibility to change your speed, your moving speed in the software. You will have the capacity to change here and to launch, to create screenshot, to launch a real-time here. just what we call a build motion. So if I click on it, as you can see, I'm in a full screen mode. I will be able to
refreshing here, so hopefully that works. Stefan, are you there?
Yeah, of course. Tell me, is there a problem?
Everything locked up over here and refreshed, and your screen share stopped. So I'm not sure what happened there, but sorry to cut you off there. I think you were just about done anyways. I apologize for that. Folks, I'm sorry for the internet connection problem. I was checking during the presentation, and it seems as though the U.S. is experiencing some internet connectivity issues. So I apologize for that. So
Okay. Sorry for you guys.
yeah, there's really nothing we can do about that. So anyway, so I'd like to move things along a little bit. Going to be recorded and it'll be made available for everybody to watch after the fact. So if you miss something here, don't worry. We'll make it available. You'll be receiving a link after the webinar, and we'll be able to follow up with you that way. So we're just about out of time. I want to respect. Actually, we're a little bit over time, but I want to respect everybody else's time. Are there any other questions? I haven't. We've been dealing with a lot of connectivity issues during this webinar, so I haven't seen a whole lot of questions roll through the chat room. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to add? I know were a couple of questions. Yes, Stefan is answering. Yes, it's standalone software. I know one of the questions was how to get content in there. If anybody has any questions for either Stefan or Fabrice, go ahead and fire them into the chat room, and we can try to address them. Fabrice, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Just looking through. I can't see anything.
No questions, they're shy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I use HDRI map for Unreal lighting? Yes, definitely. Although it doesn't quite work the same way that it works in V-Ray, so I've not used it for the same reasons, but you can definitely use an HDR, and it works very well. It's not quite as precise, so that's why I've shown here the flat white lighting, but it's the same workflow. Phil, I think people are having issues to load.
Yeah. So yeah, Fabrice, what version of the engine did you use to?
I used and keep using different versions, but 4.15 for this one.
4.15. Okay, so that's probably why, because I mistakenly said 4.16 in the link. So
you should be able to open it with 4.16.
You should be able to. Someone was saying it wouldn't load, but we'll see.
Right.
I use 3ds Max, Corona, and V-Ray for my Archvis. I really like Unreal. Well, okay, so it needs improvement compared to Corona or V-Ray. Our goal at Epic for that type of situation is, we are really visual parity with V-Ray is our objective. We do have all probably 80 or 90% of the tools that we need to get there. We're not quite there yet, but we can achieve some really amazing look. If you look at some of our automotive work with McLaren Automotive, they're using the Unreal Engine for marketing presentations, and they're a very demanding client, so it has to be good enough for them. They are not doing any offline rendering at all anymore. It's all through the engine. So high visual fidelity is achievable. It's not a single button click, as Fabrice probably explained during this webinar. There's a lot of things to consider. And there's still a lot of craft involved in getting great visuals. It's not, the software isn't going to be the visualizer. The person is the visualizer. So there's a lot of things that, we're going to have to adapt and learn to.
Yeah, also bearing in mind the fact that we're working at, 10, 12 milliseconds per image at possibly, 2K resolution, sort of 90 frames a second at 2K, whereas V-Ray will probably do, one image in 6 hours with the same problems, with the same power. So there's a lot to bear in mind. And so, yes, like you said, I think that artistry will really come into enormous, be very, very significant if we want to create good images. The freer we are, the more difficult it might become.
Right. So, all right, everyone. Well, I think we've pretty much reached the end of our time. The webinar will be available on YouTube. You'll be receiving a link for it. We won't. You can replay it anytime. I don't think we'll make it available for download. But if you can view it on YouTube, that's the best place to do so. So